Okay. Good evening, beautiful people. My name is Oluchi Chinonyermi Busonu, and tonight I'll be the coach anchoring you on the Start Your Marriage Right Academy on looking at the topic, building healthy communication and conflict resolution skills in a relationship. And I'm sure people will be wondering what's happening here. There are too many marriages falling apart, too many marriages hitting the rocks. And our desire in the Start Your Marriage Right Academy is that if you have found your way in here, you would at least take the step and take the responsibility to guard your space and be sure that you're doing the right thing, getting the right kind of information, and planning for a lifelong journey in marriage. And we wish that you don't do that carelessly. So, again, we're starting with the topic building healthy communication and conflict resolution skills in a relationship. Why would we be talking about this? Well, for every one of us here, it is a relationship that brought us to birth. It is a relationship that is making us even sit down today to be here. If your father and mother did not meet themselves and know themselves, you probably will not be here today. And that knowing would not have started without a relationship. So I'll be careful to define some terms. What is a relationship? A relationship is a special connection with someone that makes you feel happy, understood, loved, and cared for. It is actually like having a partner in crime who will walk with you through every season of life. Have you been able to establish one? Who is your partner in crime? And note that we're talking about relationships. So relationships can be a parent to a child, can be a husband and wife, can be an engaged couple, can be friends discovering themselves, can be colleagues. All these are different forms of relationship. But we want to narrow it down to the institution of marriage. So are you here and single? Or are you engaged to be married? We want to walk into this knowing why we need to have good communication skills, why we need to build healthy relationships, and how we need to address conflicts when they arise. Now, why would we be talking about conflicts? Conflict is a state of disagreement or tension or opposition between two or more people or a group of people. And what causes it? It arises due to differences in opinion, differences in values, differences in beliefs, differences in interests, differences in goals, differences in your personality, and there breaks out a misunderstanding. So I'm defining conflict first so that you will understand the place of communication in handling that. Now let's look at communication. And the way I have chosen to look at it is that it's like a magical bridge that joins between minds and emotions and brings them together in such a way that they dance together to generate a form of beautiful harmony. It is the art of sharing your unique story, the power to be able to connect deeply and just be yourself. And hey, it is the bedrock of any relationship at all. Now, what will make for a healthy communication? An effective and healthy communication is the process of conveying a message, not just for somebody to hear your words, but in a way that the recipient of that message understands and comprehends what you are trying to say. So it's not just a transmission of information. If you give information that has not been comprehended, then you have not communicated effectively. So again, I will say It is, like where your heart and your mind is dancing together to bring about a beautiful harmony. It is a situation where understanding is what is leading the way and empathy is defining the rhythm of the dance. So it is learning to speak your truth with kindness. It is learning to speak your truth with kindness and then listening with an open heart to what the other person is saying, showing value for the person in that conversation. And then conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is the interplay of empathy and understanding. It is the art of turning disagreements to opportunities for growth. So remember that we said conflict arises because there are differences in our values, in our opinions, in our personality, in our dreams, in our aspiration, and in the goals we hope to achieve. A misunderstanding sets in. But the question is, do you want to stay in the place of the disagreement, or do you want to be able to take a walk together, knowing that you are different personalities and yet can produce a beautiful harmony? It is transforming chaos into harmony. It is diffusing tension. It is creatively turning differences into beautiful bridges of connection. So for those of you who live in Lagos or anywhere where you have bridges, you can imagine what it will be not to be able to cross over to the other side of town just because there was a landmass of water. And so if you see conflict resolution as that bridge that helps you to cross over that water to the other side of town, then you will embrace it with everything that you've got. But before we begin to talk about the ways of embracing it, let's look at the myths that come up with conflict resolution, the myths in communication. Many a time you believe that when you are in a relationship, somebody should fully understand who you are. Somebody should read your mind and understand what is happening with you. Hey, wake up. There is no reading of minds in the place of communication. You need to be able to communicate openly about what your expectations are and where you are on the journey. It is expecting understanding, that is working with assumption, and wanting to overlook misunderstanding. Please never overlook a misunderstanding because they are pointers to things that require addressing. If there is something you don't agree with, then be prepared to have the conversation. But many a time, people think that when they overlook a misunderstanding, the conflict will go away. No, it's going to fester. So one of the things we're not going to leave tonight with is that we're not going to leave tonight avoiding the conflict. We're going to embrace conflict, but we're going to embrace it with the right kind of skills, understanding the terrain that we're working in. Now, the other thing that people want to do is to avoid conflict. Like I said, embrace it. Don't avoid it. Conflict is inevitable because even children birthed by the same parents don't always see things from the same angle because there are experiences that are unique to you. There are things that are unique to you. Your personality is unique to you. And so the way you will process information is likely to generate conflict with somebody that you're doing life with. So embrace it, but embrace it as something that is a learning point. Now, the other myth is that people think that it is just okay. Talking is enough. No, talking is not enough. Listening is also required. Or somebody says, I am listening. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Yes, I'm listening. But you are not engaging in that conversation. You are not responding to the person who is talking. Listening is not enough. Neither is talking enough. Sometimes somebody rolls their eyes and you're unable to read the room. You think that the non-verbal cues that you get are insignificant to stuff. No, they are not insignificant. It is time to embrace the totality of communication, which involves verbal communication, non-verbal communication, which could be like the rolling of the eyes, or when I do, when I do like, you know what that is saying? He has started again, or she has started again, or what is she talking about? We all understand those things, right? So, ignoring non-verbal cues will not help. Non-verbal cues are very significant in communication. Or you think that is a zero one-way communication. Just be talking your talk. When you are done, I'm good. Please engage in the dialogue. It is required. No one person does a talking to himself, except for when you are doing a self-reflection or you are introspective. And then people think that communication is an inherent skill. No, it is learned. All of us need to learn to grow our communication skills so that the people we talk to will be able to respond to us. And when we don't learn that, there is conflict in the room. And so, one of the things I would like to say is that there is a way that our personality types show up in our communication. And it is usually defined by the way you were communicated to. And sometimes, too, the way our personality types speak. And I'm going to focus on 4 personality types. The powerful commander, the one who speaks with such authority in a high-pitched tone and possibly comes out aggressive. Then there is the playful comedian, the one who literally wants to downplay everything, crack a joke about everything, throws banters in the room, and doesn't know when to also read the room to know when those banters are necessary. The one who is the peaceful collaborator, who just wants to buy peace at all costs, even though they may be suffering inside and stifling their own personal desires. And then there is the one who is the perfect critic, who sees when the lines are not aligned, who sees when the I's have not been dotted and the T's have not been crossed, and so can just be harsh. You know, the person who is just sharp, a sharpshooter, just blots it out as it is, does not understand the place of tact and diplomacy. I am growing in that place. Have you been able to identify yourself on the spectrum? Are you the powerful commander? Or are you the playful comedian? Or are you the peaceful collaborator? Or are you like me, who is the perfect critic? Who just wants to say it out there? If you can identify yourself on the spectrum, then you're on the road to understanding the way to navigate the terrain with grace. So, the powerful commander is a person who will say to you, let's do it now. The playful comedian is the one who will say, let's do it together. Play, 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 let's do it together. The peaceful collaborator will say, let's do it in a caring way. And the perfect critic will say, let's do it right. They've not dotted the I's, they've not crossed the T's. Let's do it right. Who are you? Can you identify yourself? Let's roll. So, with all these different personalities comes the communication style that goes with them. Are you the one who is full of criticism? You use character bashing generalizations with words like you always do, you never do, you're fond of, you always, you, almost like you're putting out the finger and pointing at the person. Or are you the one who speaks with contempt, literally attacking your partner's sense of self by talking down on them, name calling them, using sarcasm and mockery, rolling your eyes and your body language and your tone of voice just runs the person down completely? Or are you the one, when a situation is brought before you, You become the victim in the situation. You make excuses. You don't even let the person finish with what the person is trying to say to you. You begin to cross-complain and say, even you did that. If you knew you had a complaint, why didn't you wait? Why didn't you look for an opportunity to express what you had dismay over? If somebody came to say, this is what I'm displeased with, the thing you could do is at least give that person a listening ear. Or are you the one who is stonewalling? You know, you raise the wall, you give silent treatment, you respond with monosyllabic mutterings, yes, no. You change the subject of discourse, or you physically walk away from the place and withdraw from the relationship as a way to avoid conflict. You see, the truth about this is that if we must make progress in our relationship, we must embrace conflict, understanding primarily that conflict comes because we are different people with different values, with different ideologies, with different perspectives that have been influenced by the way we have been nurtured, by the experiences we have had. And so if you come to the table understanding that, then you'll be ready to embrace conflict and now embrace the way to communicate it. So, what are the best ways to communicate your dismay? You see, I have talked about the person who criticizes, the person who displays contempt, the one who is defensive, and the one who just stonewalls. So I'll start by telling you a story. And I think I may have said the story a number of, but maybe I'll say one that is very recent. So, a few days ago, I was talking to our last son, and a number of times within the last 2-3 weeks, I've had reason to communicate with him about things that I needed him to look at differently and do differently. One of that was having a project to do, and I was saying, you don't just go to the internet. The internet serves every one of us. Don't just go to the internet and pick what is there without owning it. Why don't you think about making slides? And he says, no. I give it like a week. I approach the topic again. He says, no. Then I go to my husband and I say, darling, I don't know if I'm not getting across to this boy correctly, but it's getting to me. I need him to understand the place of the extra. My husband says, okay. And all I was trying to see was how he would communicate to our son and what would change in his response. But that communication never happened. So after a while, my son came down a day before he was to submit the assignment and says, Mommy, I want to go and print. I said, are you going to print just that? He says, yes. I said, why don't you come and see? Have you listened to me do some presentations? He said, yes. Do you know that I sit down and do some slides on it? He says, yes. Nobody is seeing my slides. Do you know? He says, yes. But they are prompters for me as to what I want to say. Can you come and take a look at it? So he came, took a look at it, and we began to work on the first one. And as we began to work on it, he got interested. And then he said, Mommy, get up. Let me do the next one. So I had won the battle, right? I had communicated what I wanted him to see and get interested in. However, I still had a concern because I felt there was something I needed to learn from my husband. And so the next time I was talking about something else and my husband was on his phone. And when our son left, I said to my husband, I don't feel supported when I call our son to speak, because you'll be doing something else that makes it look like what I'm saying does not make sense. My husband didn't make a response, didn't say didn't say do. So I felt he was doing stonewalling that night. The following morning, I broached the topic. Why was it that I raised this and you didn't say anything about it? And he said, you said you never support. I said, me? So I tried to run the conversation through. I don't remember ever saying you never support me, but that was not the bone of contention. The bone of contention was that I needed to make progress. So I said, I'm sorry if I used never. That was not the intent. But honestly, I don't remember saying never, but truly, I'm sorry if I used never. And just apologizing for saying I'm sorry for using never, he turned round and said, when you're talking to the boys, I don't want to water down your authority. So I let you express yourself completely. But I do further engagements. So I said, oh, okay. But truly, I would like to see how you make the further engagements. I like to see what language you use because I'm a female and all of you around me are boys. So he smiled. We hugged in the bathroom and we went through our day. Now, so that brings me to the best way to communicate your dismay. Instead of criticism, why don't you complain without blaming? Instead of contempt, why don't you build a culture of appreciation and respect? Oh, darling, I like the way you show up for us in this way. However, I would like some other stuff. And that brings me to, instead of being defensive, can you take responsibility for your behavior? So when he said you used the word never, I took responsibility and said, I'm sorry for using never. I don't remember using it, but I'm sorry for using that. And I'm sorry that that was a turnoff for you. And then instead of stonewalling, you want to use the psychological self-soothe to combat your emotional overwhelm. And so I want to say to you very carefully tonight, matters do not get fixed by avoidance. Agree on a pause code to halt escalation conversations. And what do I mean by a pause code? So there are times when we're talking about something and I'm so convinced about what I'm talking about and my passion is showing forth in the way my tone is going up. And my husband will say, can we drop this now, please? Can we talk about it at a later time? And if he says it twice, I know that there's a line that has been crossed. There's something that is not going well. Sometimes he's stonewalling and I'm saying, you don't want to converse? Do you need more time? He'll say yes. I said, okay, please, can you define how much more time you require? Would you let me know when you are ready? I wouldn't want to come to ask about this thing myself. I will appreciate that you are the one who come when you're ready to say, baby, you raised this thing the other day, or you raised this thing a few hours ago, or you raised this thing last week. Can we talk about it now? I'm in a place where we can converse. So do you know the pause code where you cannot continue with a line of conversation because it's not going to bring you any good? You're not going to come to a compromise. You're not going to come to a place of landing, but rather is going to escalate and deteriorate into what you do not want. So people, there is something called the pause code. The way you will pause a movie on your TV, you can pause in your communication so that things do not de-escalate and go downhill. Now, there are critical questions I'd like you to ask yourself. Who taught you how to communicate? And as I say this, I am one who would immediately want to handle a matter. This is the way it is. And one day my husband said, confrontation is not the only way out. But that's all you had grown up with. And again, that brings you to how you were nurtured, what you saw. I saw my parents, if there was an issue, they confronted it headlong. There was never a delay time. But I have learned that there is a 6-second rule between a stimulation and response. And the question is, who taught you how to communicate? How do the people around you communicate as you were growing up? Because if you don't take time, that's the way you are also going to communicate. And that may be your undoing. The next question for me is, how self-aware are you? Self-awareness is what will help you understand when something is going to get you off track. Self-awareness is what will help you know when you're going to go off tandem. Self-awareness is what will help you press on the pause code and say, can we talk about this later? I really don't feel like talking about this now. And so for somebody like me who would naturally confront issues, I have learned now to also say, sometimes when I know that what I'm going to blot out will not be pleasant, what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it will not come out right. I have learned to have the conversations with myself, and I have become comfortable in saying, I'm not ready to talk about this now. The next thing for me, the next question I will want you to critically ask yourself is, do you know what triggers you? What are your triggers? When you are in conversation with somebody, what are your triggers? For me, I don't like it when you keep me quiet. I'd rather that you say, I can hear you, but I'm not in the space for this, than that you just keep quiet and allow me talk like I'm a fool. It's like you have put fuel into the fire and there's going to be a volcanic eruption. Do you know your triggers? Are you able to communicate to your partner what your triggers are? Don't take these questions lightly. And so I want to say to you that there are do's of communication. And the do's of communication is raise your words, not your voice. What you want to say is what you want to say. You don't have to shout down the roof to get your words across. You don't need to upturn the place to make yourself heard. Raise your word. Find the language that your partner understands. Raise your words. Don't raise your voice. Again, somebody once said that it is rain that grows seeds. It's not thunder. How many times have we seen that we planted corn and thunder was doing and the rain did not fall and your corn grew? It is the rain. It's rain that grows seeds. And how the rain comes is in different ways. Sometimes it comes in little droplets that seem to go deep down into the roots. Sometimes it is torrential. But remember that thunder never grows any seed. And then I need you to understand that we are all human beings, deserving of love and respect. So when you want to communicate your dismay, when you want to communicate your point, can you do it in love? And can you do it with respect? Remember that your right to express yourself is your partner's right to be spoken to kindly. So how many times do you go into a conversation knowing that you have a right to express yourself, but that you have a right to express yourself gives you no room to be disrespectful or rude? And so I want you to realize that communication is a continuum. And that continuum will bring you to a point where you are having a non-violent communication. See, violence is not only when you are hitting basboos and taking the blows. Violence can be in the words that you say to your spouse. Violence can be in the way you mess with their psychological and mental health. And so if you understand that communication is a continuum, almost like the infinity sign, it just never stops, then you would learn as the speaker to have a conversation with yourself. Determine the end from the beginning. What do you wish to achieve in engaging in that communication? How will you feel when you achieve what you wish to achieve, which is your outcome? What will be the obstacle in achieving that communication, in getting your message across? What are the obstacles? Could it be your tone? Could it be your timing? Could it be your body language? Could it be the environment, the place where you're talking about it? If you can identify the obstacles that will stop you from achieving what you want to achieve, then I'll ask you to have a plan. And what will your plan be? Your plan is that you're going to define the purpose of that engagement. And in defining the purpose of that engagement, the first person you want to engage with is yourself. Many a time, because we do not engage with ourselves first, our communication comes out brash and then makes an already bad case worse. But if you are proactive enough, sometimes even record what you want to say and listen to it. How does it sound in your ears? Are there words you want to remove? Are there things you want to change? Do you understand? That will mean that you're being proactive. And then realize too that the person you're going to speak to has a perspective. So your perspective is not the only perspective. What you know is not all that there is for you to know. Your partner has a perspective on the issue. Whether you agree with it or not is immaterial. But if you go into that conversation knowing that your partner has a perspective, what will happen? You permit yourself to express yourself. You permit yourself to have that conversation. And then to have the conversation, you are going to state what you observed clearly without inferred meaning or blaming or criticism. So you're going to ask something like, when I hear you say, or when you said this, when I hear you say, leave this room, I think you're asking me to get out. I think it comes across to me as condescending. Express your feelings. I feel unloved. I feel unsupported when I hear you say this, or when I see you do this, or when you do nothing at all. State your need without demanding it. I really want to feel like I matter. I really want to feel like I need to be part of you. I just want to be part of you. I just want to be able to get into your world. That's the only reason I come to to the table raising these issues. And then make a request. I will appreciate it if you will tell me this, if you will handle this way. Do you see that you are saying everything you want to say? And then to the listener, I will ask you to master the art of listening, because there is an art of listening where you attend to the person who is talking to you with respect. Are you reading a book on the news, on the newspapers, or or on the TV, and your partner comes to say, please, may I have your attention? Can you switch off the TV? And if you can't at the moment, can you at least pause, stop, look at the person and say, please, can you give me 30 minutes? That is attending to the person with respect. Now, respond to your partner with respect. So you've attended to him, you're responding with respect by saying, may I have 30 minutes and I'll be able to give you undivided attention. And then take time to ask questions about what your partner has said, not about validating your position, to be sure that you've gotten what they are trying to pass across before you begin to respond to them and give answers to what they may be asking. And so I want to challenge everybody who is listening to me tonight that the transformative power of communication as a continuum cannot be overemphasized. And so I will ask you all to rise up to communication. And in rising to communication, remember that what you want to achieve is to build a relationship building. That's what happens when we take the time to communicate. And if we learn the skills of communication, then navigating conflicts becomes easy. Remember that what communication intends to do and what conflict resolution intends to do is to integrate your heart and your mind. When you come into a synergy and you're having a harmonious dance together because you understand where this person is coming from, and you are approaching it with empathy, you're approaching it with understanding, you're asking for clarity about things you're not sure of, or things that they have spoken, you are not sure what they mean by that. And then what happens is that you have a seamless exchange of your thoughts, of your feelings, and of your desires. And eventually, everybody is empowered and enriched to be their authentic selves without pretense, without having to hide themselves or bottle up. And what will that do? Invariably, there'll be a growth in your relationship. So why don't you join me and take this communication thing seriously? Because every aspect of our lives, you want to talk about money, you need to be able to communicate about money. You want to talk about sex? If you don't have the language, how do you communicate? If you don't even know how to use your non-verbal cues to say when your partner is doing it right or not doing it right, how do you know? How can you read the atmosphere in the room? You want to talk about in-laws? There must be a way to communicate it. You want to talk about where you are coming from and the things that you have experienced in your path. The only way to do it is to communicate. And remember that effective communication is not just passing information out, is that the person is getting the intended message, that the recipient receives what you intend to say. No assumptions. Assumptions are dream killers. Assumptions are the things that mess up with relationships. They make any relationship hit the rocks, and things can go haywire. And so, when you rise up to communication, you'll have shared fulfillment. And so, one of the things I want to wrap up with today is to read you some communication quotes that I came across. He says here, the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. And so that's why I talked about the art of listening, where you attend to the speaker, you respond with respect, and you take time to ask questions about what the person who began to speak was saying so that your response will be appropriate. So are you here listening to me? Are you listening to understand, or are you listening to reply? It is Stephen Covey that said that. An unknown author said, speak in such a way that others love to listen to you, and listen in such a way that others would love to speak to you. And then Brian Tracy says, communication is a skill that you can learn. So all of us here should go away knowing that communication, the ability to communicate, is not inherent in all of us. It is a learned skill. And the first place you learn it from is from the people who nurtured you, how communication happened in your environment. However, do you want to stay in that place and say, this is who I am? Or are you willing to put on your shoes, put on your cap, carry your pen and your notebook, and be ready to be a student of what it is to truly pass your message across? And so Brian Tracy says, communication is a skill that you can learn. It's like riding a bicycle or typing. If you're willing to work at it, you can rapidly improve the quality of every part of your life. So remember that I just said, every aspect of life, what do you want to eat? It's communication, is it not? And the person has got to say, I want beans with pap, or I want beans with gari. And you need to understand what the person is saying. Or I'm not going to eat beans alone. What do you want to eat? When are you going out? If you don't master it, it's going to mess up with yourself, with your relationship, with your work life, with every other aspect of your life. So it's a skill that we must learn. And then I have conflict resolution quotes. Conflict resolution is about understanding and valuing differences, not about making everyone the same. You see, there is a beauty in our difference. And when we understand the beauty in our difference, we will embrace ourselves. We will know when to rise up for one another and know where to grace the occasion. So don't make your differences what begins to tear you apart. Your differences should actually be things that bring you together, where you are able to sit down, understand yourself and what you're graced in, Understand your partner and what your partner is graced in, and know how best to support yourselves. Again, the person who wrote this quote is unknown. The second one says, the goal of conflict resolution is not victory or defeat. It's reaching an understanding and letting go of our need to be right. If you come to the conflict table without the heart for compromise, without a win-win approach, you are likely to have a volcanic eruption that takes your relationship downhill. Hear me. If you come to the conflict resolution table to prove a point, rather than to understand and let go, to prove a point that you know it all without understanding that all that you know is not all that there is to know. If you come to the conflict resolution table without understanding that the person you're speaking with has a perspective and that all of us have a need to be loved and respect, and that your right to express yourself is also your partner's right to be spoken to kindly. I wonder if I have made any points to you tonight. I wonder if I have engendered in you the need to take communication seriously and to embrace conflict as something that brings a synergy and binds hearts together and brings you into a beautiful dance of harmony that will transform your relationship to the next level. At this point, I am done, and I wonder if there is any question, if there is any contribution from anybody listening to me. I'll ask again. Does anybody have a question? Does anybody have a contribution? If you're here listening to me, take communication seriously. It affects every part of your life. Do I have any comments from anybody? Any questions from anybody?
Yeah, good evening.
Uncle, good evening.
Yeah, I would say that you've done so well. And your points are valid, your explanations and your stories. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. I just want to say thank you for the amazing, wonderful presentation. And you really spoke from your heart. And I too learned a lot out of your conversations and what you are saying. So well done.
Thank you for your kind words, sir. Is there anybody who has a question that needs to be answered? Is there anybody who has a contribution before we end it tonight?
Good evening, Ma.
Good evening, Josie.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I just want to say thank you for the section. I really learned a lot, and it's something I can relate with so well. And everything you said is really 100% sure. So I want to ask this question because you mentioned some personality traits earlier. I wanted to know if it's possible for one to have all of the personal traits and personality traits you mentioned in one person and using it to handle the situations differently.
Okay, very beautiful question. So we all start off in life with dominant personality traits. However, we all have the ability to develop every other personality trait or personality trait in our lives, because remember that we said we have the powerful commander, we have the perfect critic, we have the playful comedian, and we have what's the fourth one? Who can remember? Let me see how well you paid attention. Who can remember the fourth one? The peaceful collaborator, right? The powerful commander, the playful comedian, the peaceful collaborator, and the perfect critic. Now, all of us in life require the ability to lead. That is the powerful commander, somebody who is focused on leadership. The playful comedian is the fun part of us. So if you develop the leadership part of you and you can't have fun, how beautiful will your relationship be? Then the collaborator is the peaceful collaborator is the one who wants to pull everybody together. We all need to be diplomatic. We all need diplomacy in navigating our terrain. As a person, I used to think that diplomacy was a form of telling lies. Over time, I have come to see that diplomacy is tact, learning to say what you need to say with tact and grace. Do you understand? And then the perfect critic is the one who is system-oriented, wants the structure, wants order. And imagine when we begin to grow ourselves and focus on personal development and grow every aspect of that, we become balanced individuals. We become people who can read the temperature in the room and know when to play the playful comedian and when to give directives and when to be diplomatic and when to insist on structure. Have I answered you, Josie?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So the goal should be that we all go out here desirous to develop ourselves.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Is there any other question? Is there any other question? Any other person needing anything? Any other person who wants to make a contribution? Because I just may learn something new that I haven't come across today from what you share. Everybody is quiet and looking at me. Okay. Should I assume that because nobody is saying any other thing, that we are okay and we can end the session for tonight? Can I have a yes? Unmute and tell me yes. Go ahead and end the session for tonight and we'll be good to go.
Yes.
Thank you, beautiful people. It was amazing having you here. And please do not play with the information you are getting on the Start Your Marriage Right Academy. Imagine what it will be for those of you who are here, who are single, and have the opportunity to be able to ask your questions and be guided accordingly. God bless us all as we improve our lives together.